Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. This is the show where you learn all about sociopaths. And Lovefraud's standard advice for interacting with a sociopath is not to interact at all, to implement a strict policy of no contact. That means no in-person conversations, no emails, no text messages. But unfortunately, this isn't always possible. I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight, for those situations where you can't go no contact, I'm going to offer 5 tips for dealing with a sociopath. This is a live streaming show, of course, and I'll answer your questions at the end, so please send them to me as we go along. So perhaps you're in one of these tough situations. Maybe you share children with a sociopathic ex-partner, or perhaps you have a disordered boss or coworker and aren't yet able to find new employment. Or perhaps some member of your family is disordered. If you have no choice but to interact with a problem person, here are some tips that will help you. Number 1, do not react emotionally. Sociopaths will often say or do unpleasant things just to provoke a reaction out of you. Do not take the bait. Remember, all sociopaths really want is power and control. In day-to-day interactions, that means they want to win. If they get an emotional reaction out of you, they view it as a win. Why? Because if in response to their actions you lash out, argue, cry, plead, or whatever, they experience a sense of satisfaction. Now, why is that? Because it means they still exert power and control over you. It feeds them, and you don't want to feed the sociopath. Now, it's certainly okay to be upset by what they say or do. Just don't let them see it. When you're away from them, go ahead and yell, scream, or cry. In fact, it's important to do this. You want to get your outrage out of your system so that you can calm down and maintain your cool the next time they try to get under your skin. Here's number 2. Do not try to make them understand how you feel. If you have a problem with a normal person, you usually try and talk it out. You've probably seen communications advice online or in books recommending that you explain your perspective in a non-judgmental way using I statements. For example, when you use that tone of voice with me, I feel like I'm back in grade school. Well, don't bother trying this with a sociopath. For the technique to work, you need to be dealing with someone who has empathy. Sociopaths do not have empathy, so you could turn yourself into a pretzel trying to explain your feelings, and they will never get it. You're only wasting your time and your emotional energy. Also, I've spoken to quite a few people who talked about wanting to hurt the sociopath. They said, I want him or her to see how it feels. Well, this is also a waste of time. Sociopaths do not feel hurt the way the rest of us do. They will never know how you feel. Their feelings won't be hurt by whatever you do or say. But they might get angry and come up with even more ways to retaliate. Here's number 3. Do not try to appeal to what's right. Now, sociopaths know on an intellectual level the difference between right and wrong. They just have no emotional attachment to doing what is right and no moral inhibitions against doing what is wrong. What they do have is an unbelievable sense of entitlement. That means they feel entitled to get whatever they want, when they want it, and how they want it. They feel totally justified in using any means necessary to acquire what they want, even methods that are illegal, immoral, unethical, or just plain mean. Therefore, any effort to convince them to do the right thing just because it's right for you, for the kids, the company, whatever, waste of your breath. Here's number 4. Keep information to yourself. If you must deal with a sociopath, always be on mental red alert and say as little as possible. Remember that anything you say can and will be used against you. Here's something that's especially important. If you've just figured out that you're dealing with a sociopath, do not tell him or her. Do not burst out and say, "I know what you are. You're a sociopath." You do not want to tip them off that you're onto their game, because then they'll just ratchet up the game. You must also be especially careful not to reveal anything about your plans to the sociopath or to anyone who might be talking to the sociopath. Now, this could include your own kids, friends, and family. Sociopaths are really good at pumping others for information. This is how they'll do it. They'll often pretend to express concern about you. They'll say something like, "I'm really worried about her, and I just want to make sure she's okay. Where is she staying?" Well, in this example, if they find out where you are, they might come and stalk you. But if you don't tell your friends and family critical information, they can't make a mistake and spill the beans. Finally, here's number 5. Anything the sociopath says could be a lie. All sociopaths lie. They tell big lies, little lies, stupid lies. They lie when they would be better off telling the truth. They lie while looking you right in the eye and promising not to lie. Therefore, you should not believe any statement that the sociopath has ever made unless you have independent verification. Even if the sociopath provides proof, it could still be false. These people routinely forge and fabricate documentation, websites, email exchanges, and text messages. For example, my sociopathic ex-husband provided me with all kinds of documents about his military career. They were all fake. I've even heard of sociopaths who build entire websites that seem to show their substantial bank balances. Totally fake, totally fabricated. Sociopaths also get other people to lie for them, although these people may not realize it. They may just be repeating what the sociopath told them, not understanding that the sociopath was lying. So when you're interacting with a sociopath, every word and action is suspect. Okay, those are the 5 tips for dealing with a sociopath. Remember, the best approach is always to get the sociopath out of your life and have no further contact. But if, for one reason or another, you're stuck with this person, these strategies will help you to cope and to protect yourself. Okay, so let's see what kind of questions we have today. So Eden says, "I think I may have been spied on by a sociopath, and I think the sociopath might have seen me in my angry outburst." Well, yeah, that happens, and you know, we've all made mistakes in dealing with a sociopath, especially when we don't really know what we're dealing with. we say the wrong thing, we blurt things out, we tell them our plans or whatever, and there's nothing you can do about the past. Whatever is done, and so all you can do at this point is just move forward and to recognize what you're dealing with. Perhaps watch this video again, understand the steps, do some more research, and take it from here. The past is gone, so any future engagements or dealing with this person, these are tips that can help you out. And Lou says, the sociopath narc has an entourage of people who believe the lies and support the sociopath. Yeah, that's pretty common also. They're good. Sociopaths are really, really good at explaining or mesmerizing people and getting them to follow them. I mean, they've got this energy, they've got this magnetism. So it can be commonplace that lots of people believe what they say and are following them. And sometimes you have to be cautious, especially if, they have this whole group, and if you have to interact with other people in the group, you kind of have to be cautious about how you interact with them too. A lot of people have had to examine their whole circle of acquaintances when they realize that they have a sociopath in their life. Because they find out that all these other people are, going along with what the sociopath does, and they're not getting the support or they're not being believed or whatever the situation may be. So it's quite possible that in some situations you need to really, clean out your address book and get a bunch of people out of your life if you realize that they're all intertwined with a sociopath. Okay, so Art School Girl says, have you heard of sociopaths that target an entire family unit, manipulating teen children and parents against each other from the position of family friend rather than romantic partner? Yeah, I have. Sociopaths will use anyone, and yes, I've heard of cases where they have ingratiated themselves into a family, using their message management, their communications management on everybody in the family or multiple people in the family, and sometimes you're not sure why they're doing it. And that's one of the strange things about sociopaths, is that sometimes you can't figure out the motive, because sometimes they're doing it just to entertain themselves. I mean, I don't know if that's what you're facing, but that certainly does happen sometimes. And it's hard to figure out what their motivation is, but they're just manipulating people. Other times they're looking for some kind of advantage. Sometimes they're looking for a place to live. Sometimes they're looking for some kind of business advantage. But I have definitely heard of that type of experience. So if you're in that situation, it can be hard, because not only do you have to figure it out for yourself, but then you have all these family members who are still drinking the Kool-Aid. And it may take some time or something awful to happen, like the guy, if it's a guy, takes off with some money or steals something from the house or something along those lines. It can be hard to get other people to see what's really going on. Okay, so Lou asks, do you think there is a demonic side to the narc's ability to charm and draw people under their spell? I do know that there is a spiritual dimension to a lot of these situations. So whether or not you call it demonic, I'm not sure about that. I guess it all kind of depends on your philosophy or your beliefs, but there definitely can be a spiritual aspect. I know I experienced that in my experience. There's also, as I write about in my book, the possibility of multiple lifetimes with a sociopath. I know that was the case with me. If you read my book, you'll see that I recorded about 20 different past lives that I had, with my ex-husband. And sometimes that's why you get into these situations, is because, you make a plan for this lifetime to finally fix it or finally solve it or finally end it. At least that was, what I realized that I had done through a lot of introspection and channeling and things like that. So there could definitely be other dimensions to whatever the experience is. Okay, so Holly says, thank you, Donna. Last year I discovered the sociopath in my life and have finally faced that I just didn't get it because I was raised by two sociopath siblings normalizing this behavior. That happens a lot. Lots and lots of people that I talk to who become romantically involved with a sociopath, or even those who just have some kind of friendship or interaction, realize once they learn what they're looking at, that they experience this in their family of origin. And in lots of cases, the behavior looks familiar. The manipulation and the gaslighting and the head games and the power plays and all that stuff. It may seem familiar if that's what you experienced while growing up, either from your parents or from your siblings or other family members. So what that means is that there's a lot of healing to be done. If you've had a romantic involvement with a sociopath, there certainly needs to be healing from that, but you also need to go back to those early experiences and heal what happened in your family of origin or when you were a kid or those situations. And that's why it's so important to make a conscious commitment that you're going to work on your personal healing, because you have to get to that old stuff, that really old, deep, ancient history wounds that you're still carrying around. Because that's where the real healing takes place, when you can not only recover from whatever the current involvement is, but by what happened, much earlier in your life. And that is where you really can start to turn things around and shift the balance to become more positive for your life going forward. Well, that looks like that's the end of the questions that we have for tonight. I thank you all for joining me for this episode of Lovefraud Live, and we'll see you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks a lot.